20.
We have free agency news and notes. And, we were talking about it earlier off the podcast. But, Jake, the Giants actually made the big splash. They went out and they signed Kenny Golladay, their alpha wide receiver who we were talking about. What do you think that does to Kenny Golladay stocks? What do you think that does to Daniel Jones? Are you happy? Are you excited as a Giants fan? What do you think?
Well, one, I'm ecstatic as a Giants fan in general. This is exactly what they needed. They needed the alpha dog wide receiver. I think in the last week's episode, I predicted that the Giants would pay up and they would sign Kenny Golladay, and they did it. I'm kind of a little surprised just because I thought Gettleman would be like, oh, we signed John Ross, and that's fine, right? But this is perfect. I think people are going to look at this as a downgrade for Kenny Golladay, coming from Matthew Stafford in Detroit, coming to Daniel Jones. Obviously, I'm not going to say Daniel Jones is Matthew Stafford, but I do think Kenny Galladay's fantasy stock will be fine. And I think it's actually a good time to go buy low on Kenny Golladay because people will think Daniel Jones is not the same as Matthew Stafford and he won't put up the same numbers with Daniel Jones. So with that said, on the flip side, I'm also willing to buy Daniel Jones. They signed Kenny Golladay. They have Shepard, who's going to be in the slot. They have Darius Slayton, who's going to be a good deep threat. They still have Pro Bowl tight end Evan Ingram. And
Tunyon got robbed.
Tunyon really should have been there. It was a horrible, I don't know how that happened. But
it was come on, video. There we go. Bang time.
It was a bad take by the NFL. I don't know who picks the Pro Bowl.
Whoever picks the Pro Bowl is a bad take.
Yeah, but the key here is they get Saquon Barkley back because I think he's the key to this whole offense. This offense revolves around Saquon Barkley. No matter who's playing wide receiver, no matter who's playing quarterback, if they have Saquon Barkley in the backfield, he's going to draw attention from defenses, and that is the key here because that will leave Kenny Golladay probably with a lot of one-on-ones. That'll leave Sterling Shepard with a lot of one-on-ones, and it's just going to make this offense flow a whole lot better than it did last year when you had the likes of Wayne Gallman and Alfred Morris running in the backfield here. So I just think this is a great time to buy both Daniel Jones and Kenny Golladay on the lower side of things, and it might be my Giants bias here, but I think the price on both of these guys is going to be what convinces most people to pull the trigger here.
All right. I don't know. For me, I see Daniel Jones as the next Drew Lock in the regards of, look at this guy. We just got him all his weapons. He's going to succeed. And then he just doesn't succeed because he is who he is. So for that, if I had Daniel Jones, I'd be willing to try and just salvage whatever I can with him. Probably people are.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I understand that there's going to be a lot of owners that want to sell Daniel Jones because they don't think that he's going to do anything. And if I could get him for a late second round pick, I'd be absolutely, sure, no problem. I think that's a great buy for a guy that could potentially be, a high-end quarterback too. He does, people forget that Daniel Jones has rushing upside. He is a good runner. We saw it before he, fell on his face against Tampa Bay. He ran 80 yards and had a higher top speed than, I think it was Alvin Kamara or someone like that. He's a good athlete, and people just discredit that because, he does make a lot of bonehead plays and a lot of fumbles and stuff. But, so does Josh Allen. Obviously Josh Allen has taken a massive step forward, and we haven't seen that progression here from Daniel Jones. But it's not to say that I don't think he can do it, because I think he has the mental capacity, and that's more than half the battle playing quarterback is being able to do it mentally.
Yeah, I guess I'm just on the other side where I'd be willing to sell for maybe not a late second, but mid-second I definitely feel okay about.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. I don't think anyone is going to sell him for a late second. I think if you're a Daniel Jones owner, you're really hoping for that mid-early kind of second, that 203, 204, somewhere around there.
I think I'd give probably 206 or 207, and I think that along with maybe a third-round pick or fourth-round pick, whatever you want to throw in there to sweeten the pot a little bit, might get the deal done on a guy that's like you and not very high on Daniel Jones here, even with the addition of Golladay. So
I think Daniel Jones is a decent buy for a contender as a rebuilding team. Even though it's nice value, I'm just not sure I want to buy into him. But I do think that Daniel Jones' stock is going to go up for this season, mainly because I think, like Jake said, the running attack is going to be better, which in turn will help out Daniel Jones. It's something that you saw at the end of last season. Their offensive line play was much improved, and then Daniel Jones improved. So I think that we could see a little bit more of a consistent offense, but long term, I'm not buying Daniel Jones. I'll buy him for the short term, though.
I mean, like you said, the line did improve over the course of the season last year, and I think it will continue to improve. You know, Andrew Thomas stepping into his second year, Shane Lemieux stepping into his second year. Obviously, they cut Zeitler for cap reasons, and I believe he signed a big contract with the Ravens, I think it was. But, you know, Soldier is coming back off an opt-out year. This line should continue to get better. I believe in this team, and I think that the Giants are going to surprise some people overall next year.
All right. Kind of a different surprise actually was Juju Smith-Schuster. I butchered that. How Juju? He decided to take what people are saying was a pay cut and re-sign with the Steelers rather than the Chiefs and the Ravens. I think for the other two teams that are offering him big money. Frank, you're the Steelers guy. We've talked about Juju before. I think we're all kind of convinced he was leaving. Up until maybe last week, we started saying, like, oh, maybe it might be better for him to resign. But what are your thoughts on this? Did you expect it? Are you happy? What do you think?
As a Steelers fan, I'm very happy. I really like Juju. Like some other people, I wasn't necessarily happy about all the TikToks and all the noise that was going on, but I'm also not going to crucify him for it and say, hey, Juju, like you saw. I still love Juju as a football player and as the leader of our receiving corps. Like, it doesn't really get much better as a football player than him in terms of a guy that plays hard, blocks well, does everything you need him to do. I think from a fantasy perspective, you know, I think that Claypool and Deontay Johnson owners are probably going to be pretty upset. I can agree to a certain extent. I think that Juju, though, does help the overall production of the offense, which then in turn helps Deontay and Claypool. I think the only problem is that we're going to go back to that Steelers we saw last year where it's almost like a gamble on which one of the guys is going to get the work and the better matchup and then in turn the fantasy points, right? And I think any owner of a Steelers receiver will agree with me here in that it was just a nightmare trying to pick which guy was going to do it which week. The only one that really did it with any consistency was Deontay Johnson, and even Deontay Johnson had his rough weeks here and there. So I think from a fantasy perspective, contenders get hit the most. Long term, I still like the stocks on all these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you everything you've just said on this, but I think Juju really just wanted to run it back one last time with Ben. I think he realized like this is probably Ben's last year, at least in Pittsburgh, if not his career. So I just think he's like, all right, I'll run it back with Ben one last time. I'll be a free agent next year. It's only a 1-year deal. And then if I prove myself, I'll get even more money than I got this year. So I think it's a win-win-win for everyone involved here except fantasy owners here. They're the ones that are like, man, I really wish I got to see Claypool and Deontay without Juju just because, you know, the target share that he's going to demand here.
Or even just Juju going to the Chiefs, right? Like, that would have been the dream scenario. I said it on the 3rd and 20 podcast. If I'm Juju, I'm probably going to the Chiefs. But one thing I will say is he just earned the respect of every Pittsburgh Steelers fan out there. He is, you know, his respect level has gone from already relatively high to, okay, we freaking love you, Juju. You're the man. So I think that now it's almost like if he leaves in free agency next year, the Steelers fans, because like you said, I expect Ben Roethlisberger to retire next year. I think all the Steelers fans would be like, hey, we respect you. You ran it back with us. We're still mad to see you go, but it's cool. It's cool. We're on good terms, right?
I feel like that attitude would change though if he did go and sign with the Ravens, like original reports were saying that.
Oh yeah.
Everything Frank said would just go immediately out the window.
Speaking of out of the window, let's move on to the next free agency signing. We have Kenyan Drake decided to sign with the Raiders, and that kind of just establishes he's going to be behind Josh Jacobs, which really tanks Kenyan Drake's value. But I think the bigger part that we have to talk about is what happens to Josh Jacobs' value. Because we already knew here, Frank was already really low on Kenyan Drake. I didn't love him that much either. I think none of the podcast was really going to bat for him. But there were people here who liked Josh Jacobs. He was a borderline RB1 for us, RB2 in our Dynasty rankings. Where is he at now? Where are we ranking Josh Jacobs?
I have him falling a decent amount here, just because the reason why Josh Jacobs ranked so highly for me was just the sheer volume of touches that he got every single game. Like, he was actually not very productive with those touches. He averaged somewhere like just over 3 yards a carry. Like, he was not very productive with these touches. But now you add, Kenyan Drake into the mix, who I had admittedly said I'm not a fan of in the past, and I'm still not, but he is still going to garner probably about 10 to 15 touches a game somewhere along the line. Like, I don't know. I just think this just tanks both of their values. I just don't see Josh Jacobs getting, the 30 touches that he was getting last season this upcoming year, just because, Kenyan Drake will get touches, and they're going to split this backfield, I think, relatively 50-50 down the middle.
I'm not buying that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a 50-50 split, but I do think Josh Jacobs isn't going to get nearly as many carries as he did. I still think he will be the goal line back, because we kind of saw Kenyan Drake wasn't that great on goal line work. I know he got it when Chase Edmonds, he was leaned on rather than Chase Edmonds. I think Josh Jacobs is just the better runner in that regard. But when Josh Jacobs isn't a workhorse back, and he's not great in the receiving game, like, his value does drop a lot, because a lot of his value came from his usage and that he was a bell cow. So even if Kenyan Drake takes like 6 to 7 carries away from him a game that he was expected to have, that immediately hurts him. That's like saying, Derrick Henry's getting 10 less carries. Like, very much hurts his value. That's my take on it.
I still like Josh Jacobs. My opinion doesn't sway of him. I think it's for two reasons. I still believe in Josh Jacobs' talent. I really don't care about the whole carry stuff. I think that a large reason we saw a drop in productivity last year was because the Raiders' offensive line didn't play as well as it really should have last year. We saw Trent Brown had dealt with injuries basically the entire season. I believe Richie Incognito was injured for a decent portion of the season too. The games he played, he was good, but he just missed a lot of games. And I think that was a major reason for that lack of production. The other thing is that I just think Kenyan Drake is a complete jag. My opinion of Kenyan Drake has not changed. He is still not a trash running back, but everyone kind of took the bait in thinking, oh, Kenyan Drake, he's this ultra-talented RB1 type of back. No, he's not. He's at best an 8 to 10 carry a game kind of a back. I think that this mainly is a signing for the 2 or 4 games, I think it's 2, that Josh Jacobs is suspended for. And I believe that they may look to also cut Jalen Richard because of Jalen Richard's $3 or $3.5 million cap hit. And they would have just rather have shelled out a little bit more cash to get a proven back in Kenyan Drake. Whereas Jalen Richard, God forbid he's an RB1 somewhere when Josh Jacobs or the lead back goes down, because my God, that would be a scary sight for any offense to have to deal with. So I think it was more on that note and less so that, hey, Josh Jacobs is not as good as we thought he was.
I don't know, man. You don't go out and give a running back $5.5 million, basically guaranteed in each of the next 2 seasons, for no reason. Like, you don't pay a running back that much if you're not going to use them. Like, you could easily
use them. They use Jalen Richard and Devontae Booker. It's just now they get an actual guy that they can use instead of 2 scores.
Right, but they were paying both of them combined the same as they were paying one back this year. It's just a little different. Like, you don't pay one running back that much and not use him. Obviously, Josh Jacobs is the better running back out of the two, but he's going to be used, and I think it's going to take a bigger chunk out of Josh Jacobs' touches than you think. And like I said 50-50 earlier. Obviously, it's not. I think it's probably going to be 70-30. But that's still more than any of the other backs on the Raiders took from Josh Jacobs last year. He was getting like 90% of these running back touches last year. It was absurd.
You just take the carries from 2 scrubs, combine them, and then you get Kenyan Drake's workload. Maybe add like 5%.
I guess time will tell. The Raiders did sign someone else.
Adrian Peterson last season had a higher forced missed tackle rate than Kenyan Drake. All right? John Gruden's gonna give Kenyan Drake a couple carries, and then they're gonna realize, oh shit, this guy's such a jag, he sucks, and then bang time. Josh Jacobs is back at the workload. He's gonna be nice and fresh a couple games of the season off that suspension, and I'm buying everywhere I can for any sort of discount. Bang time. Give me Josh Jacobs.
All right. Well, anti-Kenyan Drake Frank is here. Now, the Raiders did sign someone else. They signed John Brown, the wide receiver. I don't really know what that means towards Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards, Darren Waller. Just something, I guess, to touch on. It doesn't really excite me too much. I don't know. Do you guys really care about John Brown? Do you think he'll be fantasy relevant? Will he make someone else not fantasy relevant?
I think he could be fantasy relevant. Especially for the price that you can get for him, I think it's all right. It's just I'm not banking on him by any stretch of the imagination. But we saw what happened with Nelson Aguilar. I just think the problem is that he's just not going to be as consistent as Aguilar was. I really think that we're going to see Brian Edwards take over that Nelson Aguilar role.
Yeah, I don't know. Just something to touch on, I guess. So moving on, this kind of happened a week ago, but things happen, stuff happens after we record. But Curtis Samuel decided to team up with his roommate at Washington. I'm sorry, I don't think my stuff is recording right now. Okay, now it is. I don't think. So sorry. Curtis Samuel decided to team up with Terry McLaurin on the Washington football team, and now they're with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Antonio Gibson. What do you guys think about the team going in the future?
I think it's going to be a fun team to watch this year. I mean, you're going to have Curtis Samuel and Terry on the outside, a good pass-catching back in the backfield, with good old gunslinger Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. Man, this is going to be a fun team to watch. As much as I don't want to admit it, but they're gonna be in a lot of games where you go, that was one of the ugliest games I've ever seen. But you're gonna also be watch some of these games and see like, wow, they put up like 50 points. So I'm excited for it from a fantasy perspective here. Curtis Samuel, I think, is going to, have a very good season. Same with Terry. I think we've seen it that Ryan Fitzpatrick can support an offense fantasy-wise, and I'm excited. Who doesn't love a little Fitz magic in their life?
Yeah, I can't wait to watch this team too. Taylor Heineke's probably going to be playing pretty well with the weapons that he's got. Dude, I'm not giving up on Taylor Heineke, man. Give me all the Taylor Heineke.
What do you have for this guy? Like, do you represent him? I don't get it.
He proved me wrong. He really shocked me in that playoff game. Guy played really well. He looked like a starting quarterback out there. Yeah, it's only one game, but, dude, he showed me a whole lot more than I've seen out of some pretty highly rated quarterbacks.
I mean, Fitzpatrick's done it for a whole career.
I love Fitzmagic too, but this is the Heineke we're talking about, all right? This ain't Joe Schmo. This is Taylor Heineke, all right?
I have Ryan Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heineke in our league. I am pretty sure it's going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick, although I wouldn't mind Taylor Heineke becoming an NFL starting quarterback. I'm not really willing to gamble on it right this second. Maybe if I see more of him and actually have more than one good playoff game, and actually string a couple good regular season games together, then I'd be excited. But for now, I'm just pumping the brakes on that. Anything else you guys got to add on the Washington football team before we move on? Cool. So moving on, rest in peace to anyone who actually still believed in Rashard Penny, because Chris Carson decided to re-sign with the Seattle Seahawks. Do you guys think that was the best place for Chris Carson to end up?
Absolutely. Not much to add there. He's proven to be good in this Seattle system. He has Russ, he has DK, he has Lockett on the outside. I don't know. He's familiar with it. I just, like we said, running backs that go elsewhere rarely improve. So I just think him staying at consistent value, at least for next season, is a big plus for fantasy owners that kept him.
Yeah, I agree. I don't. Maybe there's a slightly better spot. I was thinking, because I'm dropping that Arizona Cardinals analysis. I think the Carson would fit there, but I think that the Seahawks offense is a little bit more favorable than the Cardinals offense for a running back right now.
All right, yeah, I can't really imagine him doing anything more productive on another team. So with that, I think the Seahawks.
Wait, real quick, what do you guys think, Chris? What do you think Chris Carson's price is right now?
Jake,
probably. I think Chris Carson you probably get for a back end second. I don't think his value is very high. I think a lot of people kind of expected him to sign elsewhere, so this news might boost his value a little bit. But overall, it's probably the mid to late second at highest. I think you could probably get him for a late second, just because people are worried about the Russ situation in Seattle. People are worried about his age, his injuries. I just think overall he's a back that a lot of people are very wary of, and you can get him for a pretty decent price, and he's likely to end up as a very solid RB2. So goodbye, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. He's someone I feel like I guess I just ride out for the price, to be honest. I think whatever he does, he does. Just because I just can't imagine getting anything kind of a good deal, a favorable deal for Chris Carson at this point. All right. So in that case, then I guess we'll move on again. We're kind of in the depths of free agency now. Probably not going to be starters for you guys. So I guess I'll just throw a bunch of these guys together real quick, and we could talk about them. We've got Mike Davis, Josh Reynolds, and AJ Green. Mike Davis signed with the Falcons. Josh Reynolds signed with the Titans. AJ Green signed with the Cardinals. And I'll lump in Deshaun Jackson too. Sorry. And Deshaun Jackson signed with the Rams. Are you excited about any of these guys? Are there any of these guys that you want to go out and buy? Do you think they have a good opportunity, a good fit? What do you think?
I'll jump in. I think the clear buy out of these guys for me is Josh Reynolds. He's a guy that I've liked previously in the past with the Rams, and now he takes over as this number 2 receiver in Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill, who's a blooming quarterback even at a late age. He's just starting to really take into his own. We saw last season he was capable of supporting both A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. I think Josh Reynolds will step right into that Corey Davis role, and it's a really good fit in my opinion. Other than that, I think AJ Green is the next guy I'm kind of interested in. Obviously, he had a horrible year last year with the Bengals. It was a really disappointing year for a guy that we're used to being a perpetual top wide receiver. Obviously, the season prior he missed completely with injury and he was coming back. But I think signing here in Arizona, opposite of Hopkins here, and with Kyler Murray at quarterback, is definitely something that I think intrigues a lot of people. If I was an owner, I might want to sell on the hype here if I had him, and you just get anything at this point because he is obviously definitely aging out. And if you can get a second round pick, even maybe an early third for AJ Green, I think it's time to hit the sell button on him.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one that interests me, not necessarily in terms of a buy, but because it's really interesting, is AJ Green and Deshaun Jackson, the two vets. Mainly AJ Green. Like I said a little bit ago, I'm doing this Cardinals analysis. One of the things that was just glaringly obvious was the fact that this team needs a legit number two, because their most reliable receiver outside of DeAndre Hopkins was Larry Fitzgerald, which, considering he was like 38 or 39, still had good hands, but he couldn't separate as well as he could in his prime. It was a huge problem for that offense. Do I think I'm getting that in AJ Green? Probably not. But if they do, I mean, there's plenty of upside. I'm personally not buying, but I think it's interesting. I guess the other one is Deshaun Jackson. McVay clearly wanted to get a speedster. We saw that the offense was nowhere near as much of a threat vertically down the field as we saw in 2019 without Brandon Cooks. Tries to bring in some... I think that they tried to have it with Van Jefferson being that vertical guy who could also win one-on-one. Not to say that experiment has failed, it just didn't pan out quickly, or maybe they have a different plan for him, so they bring in Deshaun Jackson to be a guy that can stretch defenses. And now that you bring in Matthew Stafford, maybe we see the Rams offense back to its 2019 glory with Sean McVay, more so than the past, or was it 2018 that they were really good? One of those 2 years. Instead of the more recent Rams offense that we've seen, where they've kind of just been relatively pedestrian.
Just to add on to that, the key to this Rams offense, I mean, I think it's Cam Akers. I mean, obviously they went out and the big addition has been Matthew Stafford, but I think the key to this offense and McVay's offense in general is Cam Akers. They were most successful when Todd Gurley was running through the league and then play action passing. I just think this is McVay's bread and butter, and if Cam Akers can actually scare a defense, I think this offense will take a step that puts them close to back where they were when Gurley was an elite back.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll take the other standpoint then. Just in terms of the other guys, Mike Davis and Josh Reynolds. We saw what Mike Davis was able to do with Christian McCaffrey out. If he's able to even recreate part of that, he still will be a relevant fantasy option, a good flex play. Who knows what they're going to do with running back in the rookie draft, the Falcons. But if they don't draft a running back and they don't have that starting guy, I don't really hate Mike Davis on the Falcons there. The other one who we touched on a little bit, Josh Reynolds. He was one of those other guys like Juju that had an offer from the Chiefs, but instead decided to sign with the Titans. And I'm not really sure why he did, but I guess it's for the opportunity, right? Because on the Titans right now, he's the wide receiver too. He's the wide receiver too on the Titans. We saw what he was able to do when he was the wide receiver too on the Rams. He was able to produce there with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods both battling injuries at times, mainly Cooper Kupp. So this could be time for him to be productive. I feel like this is really a make or break kind of year for Josh Reynolds to see if he'll ever have actual fantasy relevance. Mike Davis was probably last year, but maybe he could still hold on to that this year for a little bit. Moving on with that, with all the free agency signings and everything, right? The Lions' top receiver currently is Tyrell Williams. I guess that kind of means their top receiver is T.J. Hawkinson, technically. But what are the Lions doing, guys? Like, are they just going to roll into this year with Tyrell Williams as their wide receiver one?
They're definitely going to draft some people.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine this isn't an area that they address in the draft, especially with how loaded this wide receiver class is. We've talked about that a whole bunch of times. Like, I don't expect them to take one in round one, and probably not even in round two, just because the Lions have so many other holes that they need to fill here. Receivers kind of at the bottom of the barrel, but I would definitely expect a round three guy or even a day three guy, or maybe even two to bolster this receiving core.
Well, I'll tell you what, who's being extremely undervalued in the offseason is Quintez Cephas. Quintez Cephas is a guy that I liked coming out. I think that his combine, mainly his 40 time, turned a lot of people off of him as a prospect. But I think the thing with Quintez Cephas is he's a guy with strong hands. He's a great blocker. And I think he's just a good football player. So when you're on a team like the Lions, who generally speaking don't have a ton of good football players, you're going to have a big opportunity. And I think that, we've been hyping up guys like Gabriel Davis, Darnell Mooney. A lot of the other rookie receivers have been being really hyped up. But in terms of a guy that I could see having some year 2, year 3 impacts that you might be able to get for pretty cheap, I'm looking to buy Quintez Cephas anywhere I can, especially if I'm a rebuilding team. I think that the risk-reward with Quintez Cephas is crazy good, and not that I expect him to come out and blossom into a wide receiver one, but in terms of a dude that can be a flex player and a consistent flex player on your fantasy team, I think he could be an unbelievably good buy.
All right. With that, what's the price you're willing to give up for Quintez Cephas?
That's a good question. Quintez Cephas, I think, like I said, I think it's a good target for a rebuilding team. I think that he's the kind of guy that I would look to almost treat more as a throw-in on a deal than specifically going out to buy. Like, if my team, I'm rebuilding and I suck, and let's say I have Matthew Stafford, and I'm looking to sell Matthew Stafford on the hype now that he's on the Rams, well, I try to maybe on the back end of the deal throw in Quintez Cephas or something else along those lines. Other than that, a mid-third maybe. I think one of the problems that I have with giving up draft picks for Quintez Cephas in this draft specifically is that there's so many receivers. There's so many. So I think right now, third-round picks, early fourth-round picks, even to mid-fourth-round picks are being pretty undervalued by the community. Usually you'll have the guys saying, oh, well, once you get to the mid-third, it's fucking useless. Like, I have some guys that I would really want and really value that might be going in the mid-fourths that I have valued as in a class like, let's say, 2019, maybe an early third or even a very late second.
Yeah, and so I have Quintez Cephas in our league, and I think that like 304 or 305, I'd be like, yeah, see ya, I'm good. Because at that point, I feel like I could take a risk on a player that I even think has a better profile, maybe a better opportunity. So right around there is probably what I give up. He was probably drafted somewhere in the 4th round in your fantasy league last year, if you even have 4 rounds. Maybe if you're a shallower league, he could still. I doubt he's on waivers, but he could still be on waivers in a shallower league. He's just sitting on my taxi right now, and currently I'm just kind of comfortable with him on my taxi. He's just whatever. I think that was a great point, Frank. He probably would just be a good throw-in on a deal. For both sides, I'd throw him in to kind of make a deal look a little better for someone, and I'm sure someone else would be willing to take him on, as sneakily like, oh, just toss him in Quintez Cephas, and I'll make the deal work.